Hello, time to bring you the latest business news. We begin from the banking sector, and government has justified its decision to support a financial arrangement that would help some local banks to recapitalize. This follows concerns of double standards and buyers looking at how it handled recently the collapse of 7 banks. George Afe has more.
According to a government source, it was forced to support this arrangement, which is private sector-led, because of the impact of allowing these banks to go down on the economy. The source adds that the challenge facing these banks were purely a capital shortfall issue, and it cannot be anywhere compared to the 7 other banks that were collapsed recently by the Bank of Ghana. He maintained that these 7 other banks had serious corporate governance issues as well as being insolvent, and their case was not a capital support issue. Government, we understand, was also worried about the possible job losses, and if these local banks went down, how they would affect employment in this country. They also looked at the fact that even if these banks were stepped down to savings and loans, how this would restrict their workings and impact negatively on their earnings. The proposed financial deal for these banks will result in the creation of the Ghana Amalgamated Trust. The trust is hoping to leverage on some pension funds that these private firms are managing and lend it to these banks in return for an equity or controlling stake. We also learning that this will not be free money or a bailout, but rather a more support that will result in them having an equity in these banks. We are also learning that the deal will result in possibly taking some key positions in these banks and how they are going to be managed going forward. They also plans to float their interest, possibly listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange. There are also talks of looking at whether to merge some of these banks going forward.
Well, Bank of Baroda Ghana has provided further details about the agreement it has reached with Stanbic Bank, which essentially would see Stanbic assume the deposits and loans of customers of the Indian bank. Bank of Baroda, in a statement, also denies speculations it is exiting Ghana because it is unable to meet the 400 million cedi capital requirement set by the Bank of Ghana. My colleague Philip Namfuri explains what the assumption agreement means.
The loans and the deposits of Bank of Baroda customers are going to be assumed by Stanbic Bank. Let me break that down further. Stanbic Bank is going to take on the responsibilities, the obligations of all the deposits and loans together with the customers that possess these. So essentially what's going to happen is that Stanbic Bank now has the role of ensuring that all Bank of Baroda customers are served. So going forward, all Bank of Baroda customers now become Stanbic Bank customers and transact through any of Stanbic Bank's branches. Bank of Baroda says this deal was given regulatory blessing, and as such, it's going to wind down its activities in the country as part of its global mother company's strategy. They are exiting investments in other parts of the world, and Ghana is one of such countries. So we should see that going forward, Bank of Baroda will cease to exist as a bank or as an entity within the country in the months to come. But now, all customers, all deposits, and all loans have been assumed by Stanbic Bank Ghana Limited. For Joy Business, Philip Nanfuri.
Meanwhile, the central bank is expected to carry on with efforts to reform the banking sector as a new year begins. Aside from universal banks, the Bank of Ghana is on a drive to sanitize the microfinance and savings and loans sector. Banking consultant Anotu Champon says this is important for a sound financial sector.
4 more groups, that is savings and loans, finance houses, rural banks, and microfinance. Now, savings and loans and finance houses are put together because the minimum capital is the same for them, that is 15 million. The governor has intimated that there are some pockets of problems within that sector. And again, they have had this, the blessing of the government to resolve them. But so once this is dealt with, then they'll move to that area and resolve. Then there are the rural banks. Yeah, rural banks, we also have 1 or 2 that are causing us problems, and they will also be resolved. The microfinance, there's a lot of natural attrition going on. in the sense that they had a minimum capital of 500,000, and now it's been moved to 2 million. Now, so some of them are simply saying, here you are with your license, I cannot find 2 million. Or even if I find it, I don't know what I'm going to do with 2 million, so I don't want to operate. So naturally, some are hesitant, but those that have got difficulties, again, we hope that the regulator will solve them.
Well, in our final story, Apple has rattled investors with news that its sales have been slowing down, blaming economic weakness in China. In a surprise disclosure, the iPhone maker said it anticipated revenue of about $84 billion in the last 3 months. In November, it forecast sales of at least $89 billion, a prediction that had already disappointed investors. Apple's share price sank more than 7% in after-hours trade, extending its more than 28% slide since November. The festive season is typically Apple's strongest quarter, but revenue of $84 billion would mark an almost 5% fall from the same period last year and represents the firm's first year-on-year quarterly decline since 2016. In a letter to investors on Wednesday, Chief Executive Tim Cook said the firm's sales problems were primarily in its Greater China region, which includes Hong Kong and Taiwan and accounts for almost 20% of its revenue. However, he added that developed markets saw troubles as well, as fewer customers than expected chose to upgrade to Apple's newest phones. And that was your business update. That'll be it for business. Stay tuned.